Us now. Senator, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Hallie, for having me back. It's
There
good to
has
see
been,
you.
of course, there's been a ton of drama where you're standing over the course of the last few days on both sides of the Capitol. Well, on the Senate side, your colleague across the aisle, Rand Paul, said earlier today he would object to anything speeding up what he described as this rotten foreign spending bill's passage. So your point, I know, is that some of these countries desperately need aid. How much longer are they going to have to wait?
Well, hopefully they're not going to have to wait longer than this weekend to get it through the Senate, Hallie. We've got now 17 Republicans joining the Democrats, so we've got, I think, almost two-thirds of the Senate saying we should move forward with this bill. Ukraine is literally out of bullets, and over the last 2 years, they've achieved so much more than anybody could have imagined, pushing Putin back. And they've stood up not just for themselves, but for democracy, for NATO, for us. And this is a critical moment when our resolve is being tested, when American leadership is in the balance, and we've got to get it done this weekend. Of course, even if we get it done, then there's the whole issue of getting it through the House of Representatives.
You've pointed out that there's $60 billion in money for Ukraine hanging in the balance here. You've described how, as you say, they're basically out of bullets here. You've done things like, trying to get the Senate focused on that, doing some things like holding up government funding and money for the FAA, countless lengthy floor speeches, et cetera. Do you believe your tactics moved the needle at all to get where we are tonight?
I think we have moved. There were times over the last 4 months when, if you talk to people around here, they thought it was a fait accompli, that our broken politics just weren't going to let this happen. And the argument that I've been trying to make, I think others have been trying to make, is that Putin's had real trouble on the battlefield here, and that the Ukrainians taking back half of the territory, giving their lives for democracy, deserve better than our broken politics. They've set an example that's inspired the rest of the world, and I think it's beginning to inspire people here as well that don't want to leave Ukraine in the lurch. And I think Putin knows how to read our newspapers. He knows how divided we are. He knows how dysfunctional we are. He believes that democracy saw our finest hour in the 20th century. Xi Jinping thinks the same thing. This is an opportunity for us to show something very different, that democracy is alive and kicking, that we have the inspiration of the Ukrainian people who have fought this tyrant back, and that we're not going to let them down. And I think we are not going to let them down, notwithstanding all of the anguish and aggravation and insanity that it's taken us to finally get to this weekend.
To the point that you're making here, when you talk about aggravation and insanity, I think there are people who are watching this, who are watching the work that your chamber is doing, going, can Congress actually get anything done? Can they?
Yeah. Well, Putin's saying Congress can't get anything done. As I said, he's counting on that. And I think what we're going to find out is that maybe the outer edge of our failure is the Ukraine funding. In other words, that we're going to say, we're going to step back from the brink and say, that's a bridge too far. We're not going to screw that up. Our kids and our grandkids deserve better than that. We have just shown a serious breakdown when it comes to the border. We came to a bipartisan agreement at the insistence of the Republicans who wanted this as part of Ukraine. Then they walked away from it. I represent a pretty purple state, Hallie, and Republicans and Democrats and independents would like to see us have a functional immigration system. They know the one we have today is broken. My view of that is, look, let's get the Ukraine stuff done. Let's get the other funding done here, and then maybe we can go back and have a discussion about immigration without holding a gun to everybody's head and improve the system for the American people.
Do you think that conversation can happen on the border on immigration this calendar year, this election year, realistically?
Well, it's going to be really hard with a presidential candidate in the form of Donald Trump saying that his election chances are going to be hurt if Joe Biden never reaches a bipartisan deal on the border. We've seen a complete collapse in the last week for that very reason. But hope springs eternal. We can continue to try. I think in the meantime, Joe Biden is going to be able to make the case that he saw that we've got some serious issues at the border because of the way transnational gangs have been smuggling people over the last five years or so to that border, making billions and billions of dollars. And he said, look, I don't want transnational gangs in charge of that. And I brought a serious proposal to the Congress, and the Republicans walked away. I can guarantee you this, Hallie, Donald Trump's not going to make our immigration system better. And I think Joe Biden's going to be able to make this case in this election, not just on immigration, but the economy as well. And hopefully, as a result, have another 4 years.
So then let's talk about that election. Let's talk about the next 4 years, because by now I'm sure you've seen the special counsel's report about President Biden and his handling of classified documents here. A report that in several instances describes him having issues with his memory, his mental state, saying that they were concerned, they have considered that the president would likely present himself as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. You mentioned you are from a pretty purple state, Senator, as you yourself said. Do you have concerns about what you have seen and heard based on this special counsel report?
I haven't had a chance to read the report, but I'm not going to dodge what you read. I heard what you read. It's not consistent with the conversations that I've had with the president. I do wish that elected leaders in this country would learn how to treat classified material. I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and you know, the Republicans and Democrats on that committee take our responsibilities apparently a lot more seriously than others do when it comes to protecting that information. But there's nothing to compare the way President Biden responded when those documents showed up at his house, and he invited the lawyers in. He turned it all over to the Justice Department. Donald Trump still won't admit that the documents that he took, he even took. So this is another case where there's just no comparison between these two individuals.
President Biden's attorneys have argued that they believe it was not appropriate for the special counsel to reference repeatedly some of the things that came up related to the president's age, related to the president's memory. Do you think it was inappropriate for the special counsel to include that in his final report?
That's not a judgment I can make, Hallie, but I do think the president, look, the American people know that the president is not the youngest president that we've had, and we know that that's an issue of concern among the American people. And I believe the President of the United States, as he campaigns into the fall, is going to be able to stand up well against Donald Trump, who, by the way, is the same age as Joe Biden, and make the case that he's been able to not just win a political campaign against Donald Trump, which he did, but accomplish some of the most significant things that any president has in our modern lifetimes, including a bipartisan infrastructure bill, including leading the international order in this war against Putin, and a bunch of other stuff in between. He's obviously going to have to take that case to the American people and make that case to the American people, and I'm confident he'll be able to do it.
Senator Michael Bennet, we're glad to have you on tonight as our newsmaker.
Thanks for having
on the show.
me.
Thank you very much for
Hallie.
staying late. I appreciate it.